All right. Cool. Cool. So, very interesting spot, if I'm being honest. All right, just trying to essentially follow up from Tuesday. Right, so Friday currently now, Thursday, Wednesday, Tuesday. So I know that we are anticipating a continuation just because of, I believe we were around here-ish, was that the 12th? This is the 13th, cool. So the 13th, right, we were anticipating price, I was anticipating price to continue higher, right, in terms of taking this high. Right, and I was anticipating that we would well, not anticipate, but we would see price return into our orange region, which is our, I believe, daily H8, I believe, daily or H8, yeah, so into our H8 area of interest, but that's what, a 2-day, 3-day, yeah, 3-day wick. Unfortunately, right, that's not what we got. We got essentially an internal liquidity grab of the pretty much the final high that made any sense to me in terms of continuation of order flow. So I don't see why this is continuing lower, because this is not necessarily an area of potential mitigation to me. So as a result, we cannot break highs, but we cannot break lows. Right, that is showing to me that price is slowing down, price is starting to contract. So because that is the case, we have unwillingness on one direction, unwillingness in the other direction, right? We see a potential, I would say, run to the upside, because we have not taken any type of significant low. Bullish order flow is intact, even though we were in a counter, well, I would say counter trend, right, in terms of a POI on the 15-minute, right, which is where we are right now. I believe that was in a H1, yeah, H1 wick, right? So as we start zooming into this, right, this is where it's getting tricky. When anticipating, right, I don't look for a specific schematic to play. I only play a schematic if it's shown and presented to me. So in this case, right, I don't want to assume, right, a buying climax, right, a secondary test, right, after that, and then an immediate SOW. I don't want to assume that, because at the end of the day, this SOW is still just the pullback of low high retracement. So I'm acknowledging that that is happening, and I now see a potential sign of weakness, but that then is immediately taken out, and we take out relative equal highs, which leads to then an internal liquidity grab. The internal liquidity grab is now giving me that bias, right, that we can come lower based on an inefficiency there, and that is now showing to me that we can make relative equal highs, and I see a buying climax secondary test, no up thrust. This would be my up thrust, right? And because we have the internal liquidity grab, I do see an LPSY leading to a potential SOW, but it's not a full SOW until we break overall structure, and that's pretty much where we are right now. So it's a bit, I don't want to say confusing, because it's not confusing, but it's a bit unsure. Right, so in terms of reading overall directional bias, right, I need an SOW to confirm that move to the downside. So as we are right now, we have the break, we have the inefficiency that we spoke of, that created an internal structural range, but keep in mind, momentum is still to the upside. So I'm trying to anticipate both directions, which hence why we have this POI here, which is about, yeah, an M3 inefficiency fill. That is now technically in play, But even though we had the preliminary structure break, all this was the initiation of the pullback, high, low retracement. This, even though this created a potential liquidity grab to the upside, we have the bearish structural range, right? So if this is to continue lower, then I would consider this to be your full-on SOW, your second LPSY, and it's a potential, I don't want to say a weird schem 2, but it would be a type of schem 2, just because we never got any UTAD, just an upthrust, because this was not an upthrust. So then once that happens, then obviously this makes a lot of sense to continue lower, because that would be your full confirmation that we are seeing a bearish reversal. Okay, so keep in mind, the entire time that this is happening, right, I'm looking at EU here, and this is a bit tricky because I don't like picking lows anymore. You guys know this. I don't like doing this anymore. But right, in terms of, and we're looking at DXY where this distribution is occurring at a very major POI, or a potential distribution, right? But I'm more so careful what's happening in the internal order flow. I'm also reading that momentum has slowed down towards the downside here. Not only that, but you can easily see the diminishment of supply. And once we're accumulating, well, not accumulating, but once we see that momentum is slowing down, we want to know what's happening inside of that trading range. And by that trading range, I'm referring to this. Just because I know we are bearish, right? Based on previous calls, what we've said, high, low, retracement, low. But this is a very impulsive move that did take out preliminary level of structure. But all that shows to me is the sign of the pullback. But we now have a pullback, right? And because this pullback has not created a substantial new low yet, and we're starting to create a trading range, that becomes attractive to me, because if this is the sign of an overall reversal, then you get a very big trade, because it's technically an optimistic way to think, but I know, right, that every single time we're creating a new low, it's getting substantially smaller. 26 pips, 10 pips. It's getting substantially smaller every time we move lower. And because we had a very strong reaction from there, you also got to keep in mind of where we are on a weekly basis. We are in the weekly candle of interest, and we are also in the daily point of interest. And this also reacted from this red line, which I'm pretty sure, okay, yeah, that was like an H8. So you can see the H8 inefficiency was basically filled there. And that is what's creating a upwards reaction. So now I'm seeing this from a potential reversal, even though we are extremely deep, right? I don't really want to keep selling in a discount from this overall leg, because this overall leg is already very overextended. So either we're going to reverse here, or we're going to break, and I'm going to get the opportunity to short, right? And that's what I'm essentially waiting for, and I'm trying to play both scenarios in that case. Right, so even though I know I'm being counter trend, it's with reason. And that reason is falling here, right? As we're going into session today, the first thing I see that I like to see is this, right? We see a test of a potential final wick there. And this is relative equal lows. That creates a reaction. And then that takes liquidity. So this is showing to me essentially taking liquidity on both sides. And what is that reminding me of? Wrong picture. All right, I'm potentially seeing a test here, right? But I don't want to assume the schematic, right? Like I said, it has to be within reason. So what is the reason? right? So let's read this. I'm seeing, right, as we create a potential spring, I don't see a lot of volume. So I movement low volume, and I consider that low volume because it's pretty relative to what it's been. So that then creates a reaction, gives us a very deep retracement, relative equal highs. And now we do see, we see another push down here. But this has high volume, low movement because this did not create a new low. So that reverses, and that's giving me a sign that this took a lot of effort to give us this final downside push, right? And realistically, my entry should have been here if I'm being 100% honest, right? Did not catch that. That's 100% on me. That should have been my entry here. It would have been a pretty big SL if I'm being honest, but just because we missed the first entry doesn't mean I'm going to give up on it. So we have the reaction here in play that creates an internal structural range. Internal structural range is now in confluence with what we're saying with the volume analysis, with what we're saying with a potential schematic in play, right? So even though it is counter trend, I know that it's with reason, and that's what matters to me. So after this, right, I zoom in to where the character shifts, and the character shifted here. And as you can see, the 30-second has a candle there. And the reason why my SL is there is because that is the final potential area where we could mitigate, since I saw the wick there. So it would not make sense for me for this to come back down here. If not, I would probably assume a reversal, and I would probably take the counter position. So my SL was pretty big, 3.5. Well, yes and no, big, but it's still not as good as what I would have liked with this entry. This is I believe a 3.2. Yeah, 3.2. Right, and this 3.2 would be up. Currently 4-1. Oh, 1-4, I'm sorry. So not the best entry in terms of overall how we go about things, but it has a ton of potential, because if I catch this reversal, then it doesn't matter what my SL size is now, because if I'm looking at bigger targets, cool. Now we can start looking at higher potential R in terms of the overall scale. This would be my immediate first target. Right, but if the bias is confirmed in this schematic here, then I now have a bias to play with next week. So yes, my entry was there, right? But I also took a counter position here, and that was taken out, right? But something I'm seeing now is this POI was taken out, right? This is still another potential POI on the 32nd. You see a final push-up candle. This candle has actually broken, well, not broken, but given a super deep retracement. And in terms of managing this trade, my SL is actually here. But yeah, if we do take this out after potentially seeing this, if this leads to take this structure out, this will more than likely break me even or take my trailing SL out. But the reason why it's there is because I still see this in play potentially. I still see this potentially in play. But if we do break structure, then that validates the pro trend POI in terms of our minor intraday high low retracement continuation, which would lead us right to come back down lower. So either way, 2 pips in profit. So whatever happens from here happens from here. But either way, not looking too well in terms of the bullish bias, in my opinion. Right, I feel like next Monday and next Tuesday will probably give us the true positions to give us that entry to the upside. But just, I wouldn't be too rushed on this. I'm not really trying to force this, just because remember what I said in the breakdown is that we are reaching a very high or very higher time frame POI. So because that's the case, it's going to take it's going to take time to develop the move, and that's really what matters to me. But yeah, do you guys have any questions? I haven't really looked at AU today or GU, just for the GU was a simple reason that we had unwillingness both sides, but there was some very good intraday moves there. Very good intraday moves, right? Because let's see. So we have unwillingness here based on, well, unwillingness to go lower because this is still a bearish breaker structure, but low, high retracement, unwillingness, then that breaks, right? So we are now essentially in no man's land there, but that doesn't mean you can't zoom in and play the internal structure of it, which I know some of you guys did. And that's 100% cool. AU, this one's still going lower. This one hasn't shown me any type of bullishness just yet, especially because, for example, we still have bearish structure intact. So because that's the case, I'm still bearish on this. But yeah, overall, this is going to be interesting. I'm going to probably watch this for the next hour, next 30 minutes ish. See if this is going to break or not, because this is really what it's going to fall down to. Right, so I see mitigation. I see mitigation. And another potential mitigation. This is probably going to be deciding moment, just because for one, this is already topped 3 times into a POI, weak order flow, but at the same time, we have 1 mitigation, 2 mitigation, 3 mitigation. If this mitigation does not create a new low and doesn't lead us to a full SOW, then this is also going to be weak order flow. So it's just a matter of being patient now. There is no position, in my opinion, there. So yeah, do you guys have any questions? Cool. How's everybody's week been going? I mean, we got some time here. Yeah, I have like an hour to spare if you guys want to talk about something. I know Sergio's not on the call. He went to go see his girlfriend's family, so, and they live like out on a farm, so they don't really have service over there.
Why didn't you go, bro?
Yes, what's up? Some doubts regarding GU structure. Yeah, that's pretty much why I stayed away from it. There. Let's take all this mess out. All right. So what are we looking? What are we saying? What about that?
Hey bro,
Mm-hmm.
on 1 hour and 4 hour, the structure has shifted. Like on 1 hour, I'm saying that you took unwillingness trade from here last week, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So on 1 hour, it's bullish, but on daily, the daily leg is still intact and it's bearish, right?
I wouldn't see this as bullish. I wouldn't see this as bullish. This is not a substantial new high. All this looks like is like momentum based on this. Yes, this is a break, but that's not a substantial break. You see a substantial break here based on low and low. So this is hard to say if that is a bullish break of structure or a prolonged liquidity grab. And I don't want to say that's unwillingness because this is pretty much reacting based on that POI there. So let me take this off. Right, so that, even though it jumped once, and if we're starting to zoom in, then you could see the play was there. The wick of interest, that generates bearish order flow. And even though you could say that's bullish, right, I'm not going to buy after that, right? I covered that on Tuesday. I'm not going to buy because this here, right? So this did give us a rally, but bearish order flow is in play based on this and based on this, and then a bearish break of structure. So even though I'm bullish, it's hard for me now to justify a long position because the internal structure has been broken. This led to unwillingness. The unwillingness is bearish order flow, and this is creating downside movement. So I can only assume bearish continuation. So what are your doubts?
Yeah, actually, initially, at the start of the week, I was just confused about the structure of GU, whether it's bullish or bearish. But according to daily, it's bearish. So I like took sells only, but still, I was like I wanted to confirm with you.
You don't need to confirm with me, bro. You know that, right?
Yeah, but still, and also
And also,
yesterday and
you also gotta
Thursday.
reference this, bro. What is that? What is that?
Consolidation,
Exactly. So what do you do when there's consolidation?
like stay away.
Well, I wouldn't say stay away, but be cautious. You're confused because you're trying to overthink it, but you're overthinking it because it's a trading range and you're pretty much trying to assume which direction it's going to take. I don't know what direction it's going to take, but I'm going to play it based on what it's showing. Which for now looks like it is probably going to keep being bearish because we were originally bearish.
Okay, bro. Cool. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, this is, I don't even want to call this a bullish invalidation. That looks more so like a bearish target, if I'm being honest. Because we already had liquidity grab continuation. Right, unfortunately, this happened, while I was asleep, but this is bearish for the most part. You can't assume otherwise. Cannot assume otherwise. Yeah.
I was awake, bro, here, and I was like wanting to sell, but the price action didn't make sense, so I couldn't. Like,
Wait,
if you were in my place, how would you like execute a sell at that place? I
wait,
just
what?
wanted to know that. Like, I was awake at this time where, like, yes, where it's your cursor right now. So
Hmm.
I wanted to take a sell, but the price action didn't make sense. So I just wanted to know how would you have executed?
Well, it depends what kind of execution you're wanting to take. Are you going to
Yeah.
take the order flow or are you going to take the overall directional? Because if I'm going to
No,
take the
I
overall
just
directional,
uh,
I'm going to take that. That's the overall directional, right? Or if you want it to be aggressive, that's your overall directional. But if you're wanting to
no,
play a
like
reaction,
reactions, yes, with reactions.
right, which you don't always need to play from a reaction, right? But the only way that you're going to get this trade is if you're being aggressive, right? This is that M1SC. But the only thing is I don't want to assume that as a break. So I probably wouldn't have even taken this. Unless you're taking an order flow continuation, which probably wouldn't have happened, right? The break of structure, internal SR, right? Reaction, right? If you want it to be aggressive, there's one, right? And then let's see, M1. Delete this. No, yeah, I probably wouldn't have taken this.
Bro, because sometimes what happens, like this internal SR, it comes deeper to knock me out. And then, like, when it's messy, I don't take internal SR execution. Like
Mm-hmm.
here, it was good,
But I like
but
this. I like this. Momentum. That's pretty much what I always trade. Strong momentum, half of a reaction. So if I was looking, this is justified. This is your, if I'm being honest, this is your Tomas type trade right here. But yeah, I'm more so, honestly, I would have probably taken a limit here, if I'm being honest. That one is very clear. The thing is though, is if you wait for a reaction every single time, you're probably not always going to get a trade, which is why you see me trying to transition over to limits, and the reactions are usually only inside of trading ranges or some type of trading range that needs that conversion. Because for example, you don't need, for example, here you don't need a conversion majority of the time because you're pro trend, right? High, low retracement, deep retracement in terms of low and high, but you're still pro trend bearish. So solidified high, and this continuation makes sense to the downside. But whereas in EU, the reason why I need that reaction there is because I'm trying to catch a conversion of bearish to bullish. I think EU wants
yeah.
to go. Yeah, I hope it does. Hope it does. But yeah, that could be a flaw in your model. Because one, you gotta acknowledge what environment you're in. Two, you gotta realize what kind of trade you're taking. Three, you gotta see where your overall picture is. Right? So yeah, there's probably a flaw in your model if I'm being honest. Because I know
Yeah,
every single
because
trade you take is a reaction. I know that. And that's
yeah,
okay, but are you willing to wait for a reaction every single time? Or are you wanting to get in the trade? And are you going to sacrifice your win rate? Are you going to sacrifice the amount that you risk in terms of overall risk? So those are the questions you need to ask yourself. It's not about being dynamic. It's just about acknowledging what kinds of trades you're going to take and what your risk is. Being
because I have
dynamic
tried.
is selling and buying, you know what I'm saying? That's a completely different thing. You could split risk over two trades, but is the R worth it afterwards? Because you got to think about it. if you're looking at a 1 to 10, 1 to 7, 1 to 7, 1 to 10 intraday, at least you're thinking, if you're thinking 1%, but then you're thinking 0.5%, 0.5%, right? You also have to consider that you're scaling out of your trade. So that 5%, that 1 to 7 could be 1, 2% max. So now, is that worth your time? And that's a question you have to answer. So if you split your risk, if you're getting a 1 to 7 and you're splitting your risk, that means the most you could get is 3.5% out of that 1 to 7, because you're in half risk. So then if you're considering the fact that you're scaling out, right, like I said, it could be a 2.5% max after, when you could typically get 5 to 7%. So is that worth your time? True RR, exactly. Is it worth your time? That's what you have to ask.
I have a question on GU. Could you go to the 5-minute chart on GU?
As of now? Like current?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. You shown the 5-minute, the red box, and said that this was an actually good short entry. I just have a question on this, because this is unwillingness, right?
No. In terms of an overall scale, not until that breaks.
Ah, okay, understand. So basically,
Why are you
that.
thinking reversal here?
Yeah, it's maybe it's a mental thing, but when I'm looking for shorts in a scenario like this, it's like it's putting me off to see that it didn't create a lower low.
But you already have a new lower low here. So why are you thinking reversal?
Yeah, exactly. Good.
And why are you thinking bullish break of structure here when you're bearish? You see what I mean? You're just assuming reversal, and that's gonna kill you long term.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yep. But yeah, I mean, this one looks bearish, but the thing is I want EU to be bullish, even though it looks like it wants to go. Already broke through the POI, internal disruption. So realistically, this should be starting to move up higher. Unless we get a bad H1 closure. But that would be nice there for an H4. And then daily. Yep. But that weekly is still not attractive at all. But yeah, I mean, unless you guys don't have any more questions. Cool. Let's see. But yeah, I'll see you guys on Tuesday.